So hello everyone. So yesterday we have connected MySQL database to store employee information, right? So it is very easy. So what we have to do to connect with MySQL database, we just need to add MySQL dependency in pom.xml, and then we need to specify the properties like username and password and URL. You have to specify username and password URL in application.properties so that your application can connect with MySQL database. If you want to connect with the H2 in-memory database, then you just need to specify H2 in-memory database, username, password, and URL. So let me start the server. So today we are going to discuss Spring Boot profiles. Okay, Spring Spring Boot is having one of the feature called profiles. So Spring Boot profile. So we already discussed earlier initial classes. So Spring profiles nothing but for example, the moment you create the project, so your project is going to deploy in different environments, right? So like generally, if you want to go your application in production, so before that there are set of environments are available, right? Set of environments your application is going to deploy before your application going to production. So let me open notepad plus plus or something like that. So let's say you have developed the application successfully, your app is ready. Your app is ready. So once your app is ready, so what will happen, your application has to go to production. So before going to the production, your application should test in testing environment, in dev environment, and UAT environment, and stage environment, and prod environment. So different environments are there. So different environments are there. So let me type like initially dev environment, and after that UAT environment. UAT in the sense user acceptance testing, and stage environment, and prod. So each and every organization, they will have different kinds of environments, so they can deploy their application, right? So here I have defined four environments. One is dev environment. Dev in the sense developer environment. So after once developer environment, your application is tested, so then it will move to UAT, user acceptance testing environment. So R testing and R test environment, you can call R test environment, UAT or test environment. So once dev completed successfully, so your application is going to deploy it in UAT or test environment. Once test environment successfully tested by the QA team, so after that, so your application is going to deploy in stage environment. Stage environment in the sense after UAT testing, so stage environment, your end user will test actually. End users, all the users, developer, tester, sorry, end user, everybody will test in stage environment. So whether your application is went well successfully or not. Once it is went successfully, everything is goes well, your application doesn't have any issues, then next your application will going to deploy in production. So finally your application can deploy in different environments like dev, UAT or test environment, and stage and prod environments. So how we can switch different environments? For example, so if you one more thing. So if you deploy your application in developer environment, your application so developer environment database will be different. Developer environment database will be different. Let me tell you one way to make you easily understand what I will do. So let's say your application deployed in dev environment. So developer environment, let's talk about database. Your database will be different. Your database URL will be different. URL will be different, like localhost :80 8080 slash your application. So your application, okay, your application. So similarly, let me type HTTP colon slash slash. So let's say your application uh, your application deployed in dev environment. So your application is going to connect with database URL. This is not URL. Let me copy the database URL. So let's say this is in-memory database. So your application is connecting employee DB, one of the specific database. So now come to UAT or test environment. UAT or test environment, it may connect with MySQL database. It may connect with MySQL database. So similarly, your stage environment may connect Oracle database. So Oracle database, as of now, I will give SQL, MySQL only. So I will just change the employee DB instead of employee DB stage underscore DB. So this is another database, and your production will connect with the production database. So let me give another one. This is only example, guys. Okay, example I am giving to make you understand. So prod underscore DB. So dev environment will connect with different database. UAT will connect with different database. Stage will connect with different database. Production will connect with different database. Now, so if you want to if you want to successfully run your application with all the database with the different environments, what you have to do, you are going to create a separate application for dev environment. You are going to create another application for UAT, or you are going to create another application for stage. You are going to create another application for prod. So answer is no. So you no need to create different projects like different applications. Let's say take this one example, Spring Boot JDBC application. So if you want to deploy this application in different environments, you are you want to connect with different types of database. So what you have to do, you no need to create separate project for that. So same application, the moment you deploy in a developer environment, your application should connect with developer environment database. If you same application, if you deploy it in UAT or test environment, if your application should connect with UAT database. Okay, so if you deploy your application in stage, so that your application should connect with stage database. Similarly, production. So how we can achieve that? So we can achieve the concept is called, we can achieve the concept called profiles. The concept we are going to achieve to connect with the different database. What we are going to use? Spring Boot profiles concept. Spring Boot profiles concept. So what it will do? So whenever you are deploying in your application, you are not going to create multiple projects. Same application, you are going to deploy it in dev and UAT and stage and prod. If you are deployed in your in dev environment, your application will connect with dev database. If you deploy in UAT, your application will connect with UAT database. So how we can achieve that? With the help of Spring Profile. So now we are going to implement that. So now let me create package called configuration. So these are all related, database related or properties related. Everything will be belongs to configurations. So that's the reason I am going to create separate package like config package. Okay, config package. Finish. I just created the configuration package. So now here we have to create the class. we have to create the class. So what name we can give? So what is the concept here? So our application should connect with multiple database based on the environment. Based depends on the environment. Our application should connect with respective database. So for that, so that is the main concept. So for that is the reason I am giving name as a database configuration properties. Okay, so I'm giving name it as I'm giving class name as database configuration properties. Very simple, guys. It's very easy. You just need to understand the concept. That's it. So I have created the class. Okay, so I have created the class. So what we are going to do? So this class, so our application should connect with different kinds of databases. So if you want to connect with the database, what are all the properties we need? So we need URL, username, and password. So we need three properties. So just create those three properties in this class. Private string URL. So what is the another property? Private string username. Another one, private string password. So we are going to create configuration file to connect with a different database based on the environment. So now to connect with the database, we need these three properties. So just create setters and getter methods. So how we can create? Right click on the class, source, and click on generate getters and setters. Some people, if you are connecting with we can say if you are experienced guys, or if you are trying 3 years experience or 4 years experience, some most of the people will ask you in interview, so how you can connect with multiple database. So how your application can connect with multiple databases. So can you explain, or can you write the code? So this is going to help you to answer you to answer that question. Okay, so now what I have done, I just created a database configuration properties and created three properties to connect with any database. So URL, username, and password, and created setters and getter methods. That's it. So now, so how you can if you want who is going to take care of our configuration? So since we are working with Spring Boot application, Spring Boot will take care of it. So we are not going to write the code to uh, connect with a different environment. Generally, earlier we used to write a lot of logic in XML file. We have to define properties files, and based on the your environment. So each separate each and every environment we have to create separate XML files and properties files, and also we have to write lot of code. So the moment Spring Boot came into picture, our developer lives becomes very easy. So now we no need to write lot of code. We just need to focus on business logic. That's it. We no need to do our no need to write the code to configure all the properties. Okay, so now what we have to do? So if you want to make your Spring Boot should know your database configuration class. So how Spring Boot will know? So you have to specify there is a annotation called configuration. Configuration at the rate configuration properties. You can see there is a annotation called configuration properties annotation. By specifying this annotation, so Spring Boot will take care of it. Our application level configuration, you can see annotate for external configuration. Add this to the class definition or a external bin. Okay, so here you can specify your properties file. So this file will identify your properties files. Okay, so you can go through it if you want to go in depth. So you can find all the information here. So what it will do, all the properties which are available in database configuration properties.java, those properties will bind with your the values which are available in properties file. The values which are available in your configuration class, these values will be bind to your resource file. Resource file in the sense application.properties. For example, these are all the values. So how we can specify? So how Spring Boot knows which properties file I need to prefer, or which what kind of properties I have to configure. So Spring Boot should know, right? So for that, what we need to do, we have to give prefix here. We have to provide prefix. So Spring Boot will know. Okay, I need to find all the values to these properties based on the prefix. So what prefix, nothing but in application.properties. So what, this is the key and this is the value. So left hand side will be key and right hand side will be value. So application database properties. So if you want to connect with database, you need URL, username and password. So if you want to provide URL, what is the property? Spring dot data source dot URL. This is the property to specify your database URL. And so what is the common prefix here? If you find common prefix here, what is the common? All three properties. So Spring dot data source is common prefix for to connect with the database. This is common prefix. So this is the, we can call it as a prefix. So you have to provide this prefix to your database configuration properties. Just to provide this. So what will happen now? So now your Spring Boot clearly knows I need Spring Boot need to search all the values belongs to username, URL and password. So based on this prefix, Spring container can find these values in respective properties file. So we just need to provide prefix in class level. That's it. So next, this is second step. What is the third step? Total three steps, guys. So first step, you have to create the class, and then so you have to specify your so since it is a database connection, so you have to provide URL, username and password. You have to declare your respective properties in that class. Then you have to declare, second step, you have to declare your class as at the rate configuration properties. So what does it mean? So Spring container knows this class belongs to properties configuration, and Spring will knows so the values which are going to assign these properties. So Spring Boot will knows based on the prefix which you have given here. So this is the second step. Next, third step. So who is going to create our database configuration properties object? We are not going to create. Who is going to create? Spring container itself. So what we have to do? We just need to declare it as a component. That's it, guys. That's it. Very, very easy. Only three simple steps, not only related to database. Anything. For example, if you want to fetch properties from external properties file, then or any other, for example, if you want to get some information, external information, you can create a separate configuration file for that. Okay. So here we are going to create database configuration file. So your application can connect with any database, depends on your environment. Okay. So now your configuration file is ready now. So now what we need to create? So our application will deploy it in dev environment, UAT, stage and prod. So as of now, by default, your Spring application is having application.properties file. Only one properties file. Your Spring Boot is having by default one properties file. So by default, whenever you are starting the application, whatever database configuration which you have defined in application.properties, so your application is going to connect with this database by default. So now what is our agenda? So we have to connect with different database in different environments. So for that, we need to create separate properties files. So let me copy the properties file name. Just you have to right click on resource folder, guys. Right click on resources folder and then new file, create application hyphen. So create application hyphen dev dot property. So what does it mean? So this dev dot properties file will have dev environment related database information. Let me finish. Click on finish button. So your properties file is ready here. So now what is another one? Just click on new. For the time being, I will create two environments. So let me create dev environment and let me create a prod environment. So for the time being, I have created two environments. Later, if you want, you can create stage and UAT. So let me click on finish button. So now what we need to do? So we need to provide in the application hyphen dev dot properties file. You have to specify your dev database information, dev environment database information. You have to provide here. So let me copy. Let me connect with. So currently we have two databases, right? In memory database and MySQL database. So let me use MySQL database in dev environment. So we'll do one thing. Better create a, MySQL database in prod environment and dev environment. I will create H2 in memory database because developer always need to test in dev environment, right? So this will be H2 in-memory database will be good for developer to test their application. That's the reason I am giving H2 in-memory database in dev environment. You can connect any database. Like here you can give MySQL or HTML memory database or Oracle, anything. So logically, the project which we have created H2 database and our application can connect HTML memory database and MySQL database. Let's assume so our application is going to deploy in prod environment and our prod environment, our application is going to connect with MySQL database in real time environment. No one will use in-memory database in prod environment. So prod environment always it can be MongoDB, it can be MySQL DB, it can be Oracle DB. Okay, so that's the reason to make you easy to make you understand. I have given MySQL in production environment, MySQL details. Just uncomment it. So dev environment I have specified H2 in memory database. Okay. So now we have two different environments. So now question here is, so how we can connect with the dev environment and prod environment, how our application can connect with dev environment or prod environment by specifying there is a property called spring dot profiles dot active. There is a property called spring dot profiles dot active. You just need to remember profiles concept. So if you want to connect with a different database based on your environment, so you need to use profiles concept. So what is to enable that profiles concept in your application? So what is the property? So this is the property spring dot profiles dot active. So here what you need to specify. So let's say this application, if you want to, so this is a if your application, if you want to connect with the dev environment, you just need to specify the value as dev environment. So if you want to connect your application with the prod environment, you have to give prod environment. That's it. You no need to create separate project to connect with different database. You just need to create only one project, and that one project can connect with any database based on the configuration which you have defined in application.properties. So what is the key? Any one only, guys. Twice you cannot mention. So to make you understand, I just given two properties. So we have developer environment and prod environment. So let's assume currently we have developer environment and prod environment. So anyone. So for example, if your application, if you want to connect with the dev environment, you just need to specify dev environment. If you want to connect with your application with prod environment, you just need to give prod. If you want to connect with stage environment, you have to give stage. If you want to connect with the UAT environment, you have to give UAT. That's it. For the time being, I am going to connect with the dev environment. Let's say dev environment or prod environment. Let me give prod environment directly. So I want to connect with the production environment. My application wants to connect with production environment. So now I have created the configuration file to access URL, username, and password from specific environment properties file. So now this is the main application.properties file. You have to specify uh, profiles property. So spring dot profiles dot active is equal prod. So now the moment you start the server, what will happen? So your application is going to connect with production environment. So production environment related database. Your application is going to connect with production environment related database. So now what is the database we have provided in prod.properties? MySQL database. So if you start your application is going to connect with MySQL database. So let me open and check the console. If you see the console, see, your application is connecting MySQL database. So your application is connecting with MySQL database. So now I want to connect with dev environment. So let me give dev environment. My application wants to connect with dev environment. Let me stop the server. So let me start the server again. So if you open console, you can see now your application is connecting with H2 memory database, H2 memory in memory database. So dev environment specific properties file is having H2 in memory database. So the moment you specify your profiles.active property as dev environment, your application will connect with H2 console. So next, so let's say you have not given this property. Let's say you are not given this property. So what I will do to make you different database, I will create EMPDB. So this is the default database I have created. So this is the application.properties file is having default database configuration. So if you don't give this property, if you don't enable this property, and then what will happen? So your application is having capability to connect with the dev environment, production environment, but thing is that we are not enabled profiles profiles feature. We have not enabled profiles feature. So what will happen? So your application by default will connect with the properties which are there inside the application.properties. So Spring Boot will take care of, by default, it will connect with the properties which you have specified in application.properties. So this database is going to connect with, your application will connect with this database by default if you don't specify any environment. Let me try now. So what will happen? Let me start the server. We will try insert database, guys, so that you guys will have clear proper understanding. Okay, so first I will show you it in console, later we'll insert the data in different environments. Okay, so now if you see, I just started the server. So which database my application is connected? You can see my application is connected with empdb. Which database? empdb, and that is belongs to h2 in memory database. Where it is located? It is located in application.properties file. So I have not enabled the Spring Profiles concept. So if you don't enable, by default your application is going to connect with h2 in memory database, which is configured in the default properties file called application.properties. You can see our application right now, it is connected with emp database. You can see empdb. If you check the console, h2, our application connection, you can see console available at h2 console, database available at emp database. So now I want to enable dev environment. I want to enable dev environments. So what will happen? You can see your application restarted. So you can see your application is now connected with employee database, h2 in memory employee database. This is, you can see twice. Earlier only empdb, now it is connected with employee db. Earlier connected with empdb. The moment you enable the dev environment, your application is connected with employee db. Why? In dev environment, you can see this is a dev environment. The properties file application, left hand side you can see application.dev properties. So it has in-memory database configuration. What is the database name? Employee DB. Your application is connected with employee DB. So now I want to connect my application with production environment. So now let me save the application. So now your server is restarted. So you can see database available at employee DB. Still it is employee DB. Why? Because, okay, so in prod environment also I have given employee DB, right? So let me give different database in dev environment, guys, to make you difference. Okay, so here I will give what I can give. Okay, let me user database, or you can specify dev underscore emp underscore database to make you clear understanding. Emp underscore dev underscore emp underscore database. So let me give enable dev environment. You can see your application is connected with, you can see console log, your application connected with dev environment, dev employee database. So now similarly in production, so if you want to connect with the production, what is the database? Employee db. In production dot properties file, application even production dot properties file is having mysql database connectivity. What is the database name? Employee db. So let me enable prod now. So if you save prod, you can see your application connected with employee DB, which is available in application prod.properties. Very easy, guys. This is how your application can connect with multiple databases based on your specific environment, whether it is developer environment, testing environment, UAT environment, sorry, stage environment, and prod environment. So now another question. Sir, now I have deployed the application in server, but I don't know whether my application is connected with developer environment or production environment or stage environment. So if you want to check that, what you have to do, you have to open console. console log, right? You have to you have a server log. For example, in developer environment, in Linux environment, you have deployed your application in dev environment. Let's say you have deployed your application dev environment. If you want to check your application is connected with which database, you have to open the log. You have to open the console, application console. You have to open the log file, and then you can verify your application is connected with a specific database. So every time you have to open the log file and then you have to check. Instead of that, what we can do, we can create one specific one REST controller to check whether my application is connected with which database I want to get to know, to create the API saying that my application is connected with which database. How do you know without seeing the logs? How can you how you can find your application connect with which database? Now what we can do, we just need to create one controller. Let me create one controller, guys. Very easy. If I show you, you can understand very easily. So what you have to do, let me create one package, guys. So generally you have to follow the standards. So this is the controller package, right? Inside controller package, this should have only your business logic related controllers, employee controller or vehicle controller or something, anything like that. So now I want to check database related configuration information. For that, so you should not create control. Even if you create inside this package, your application will work successfully. But according to standards, you have to create separate package to specify your database configuration related business logic. So what you can do, I will create another package called config config package. Config, it's already there. I have created. Yes, it's already created, guys. Let me delete previous batch I have created. So let me create new package. Just what you have to create, config or configuration, anything. So config or configuration. So based on the team lead or your architect, so they will create your base structure. You no need to bother about it. Wherever you join your company's, right? So it is already been created. So you just need to identify the specific package. So here we are going to create from scratch, right? So you can give any name. So as of now I will give configuration. Let me finish. So inside that, what we have to create, we are going to create one controller, database REST controller. Database okay, let me give database REST controller. So after that, you just need to click on finish button. So now what you have to do, so this class should become as a controller, right? REST controller. You have to give at the rate REST controller. That's it. So now I want to fetch public. So what we are going to fetch, we are going to create the API saying that my application is connected with which database. So how you can get the database information, by specifying your database configuration file which we have created. So let me show you, by mistake I have deleted, guys. Config, our database configuration file I have deleted. Ayyo, shit. Okay. Configuration. Let me. I have deleted, guys, by mistake. Okay, don't worry. So let me create again. Database con. I got confused and deleted by unfortunately. So what you can do? Database configuration. Database config properties. Configuration properties. So click on finish button. Then what you have to specify at the rate configuration properties. So what you have to give in prefix, you have to give prefix. So what is the prefix? Spring dot data. Oh, you are see spring dot data source is the prefix to pick your database properties. So now let me create private string URL. Okay, private string username. Okay, so now next private string password. That's it. So now what we need to create getters and setter method. That's it. Very easy, guys. Source, generate, getter and setters. Click on generate button. So setter and getter methods are available. So who is going to create your uh, database configuration object? Uh, Spring container. So spring container how spring your spring container knows to create your database properties file object. So by specifying at the rate component annotation. That's it. So now what I will do or see data source. So now we'll create your controller, guys. Config controller. So let me create here configuration, or let me create instead of creating it here. Here also you can create. Let me create as of now in configuration class. I think where we have created employee REST controller, database REST controller. So okay, so already I have created database configuration properties and database REST controller. So now we can create our API. So your API is going to return your database environment. So what is the class? This is the class database configuration properties. What it will return? Your database configuration properties. So get database info method. Just to create get database info method. That's it. So which object it will return? It will return database configuration properties. So who will create your object? Springboard. What you have to specify here? Private database config. So database configuration properties, then database config properties. If you learn the core concept, initial classes I teach you, right? So very basic concept, dependency injection and tightly coupled and loosely coupled. If you know this concept, you can understand very easily rest of all the concept very easy, right? See how much easy it is if you know those basic concepts. What do we need to declare now? Auto wire nothing but spring container will create our database configuration properties class object bean class object. So let me, so what it will return this method? Return database properties. That's it. So now what is the next step? You have to create what is this API? So you have to read the database properties. You want to see database properties, the your application which is connected with database, the database information you are going to create the API for that. So what does it mean? That means it is get API, get mapping, right? It doesn't have, this API doesn't have any input. That means you have to create get request, get mapping, and provide your URL. So what is the URL name? So you can see database properties. You can give database properties. Okay, database properties is the your API. So that's it, guys. Your application now, I think it's restarted, right? So let me open the browser and open your Talent API. So just specify your URL. So what is the URL? database properties. What is the HTTP request method? Get request. So what kind of a response you are expecting? You are expecting JSON response. So now let me send the request. You can see, if you see your response, see currently right now your application is connected with employee database. Your application is connected with employee database. Where, which employee database, where it is defined? Let me go there and open your properties file. Application.property. Which environment it is? Prod environment. Right now, your application connected with prod environment. So you have to go to prod.properties file. So prod.properties file is connecting with which database? Employee DB. So you are getting response employee database, which is connected with production environment database. So now let me check to connect with dev environment. So I just saved the file, server is restarted. Now go to your REST client and then send the request again. So 404, why, let me open, is equal to dev. So dev dot, let me stop the server. Sometimes your server will not restart properly. So what you can do? So database, check your database property, database controller. So sorry, properties configuration. It is returning earlier, right? So now let me run the server. Check, is there any errors in console? No, no errors. So now go to your REST client. Now send request again. So oh, you see, it is URL incorrect, guys. So I have given wrong URL. That is the reason. So what is the URL? By mistake, I copied that URL. So let me copy the database properties URL. So now paste it here, send the request. So by mistake, earlier also it might work, guys. So by mistake, I have given wrong URL. You can see here. See now your application is connected with dev environment, dev database. So you can go and check dev environment, dev underscore emp database. So generally, whenever the database is created, right? So we used to create with dev environment, in the sense emp underscore dev underscore emp. So logically, in the real-time environment, dev underscore emp database. So if it is this is the prod application. So if it is prod application, then you can give uh, prod underscore emp underscore db, prod underscore emp underscore db, and dev you can give dev underscore emp underscore db. That's it. Your naming convention should be like this actually. So real-time environment, how you can create dev underscore your dev database name, and prod environment you have to specify your database as prod underscore your specific database name. So right now in MySQL, I have not created like this. So that's the reason I have given employee DB. So let me create a like in real-time environment so that you guys will not get confused. So let me open SQL Yo. Open, right? So what is the name I have given? Employee DB, right? Instead of that, I will create a new database to make you understand properly. Okay. So prod underscore emp underscore db. Prod underscore emp underscore db. Just create it. So now you need to create the table here, right? So from where you can create the table, we already have the schema here, right? Just copy and go to your database and SQL, just run. So select the database name. You just need to select the database name and run the execute query. So what will execute? So now your table, your prod underscore employee underscore db has employee table. So now prod underscore emp underscore db I can give in production environment properties file prod underscore emp underscore db. So now let me stop the server for the time. So now let me start the server again. So now which one we have given him by default? Uh, application.properties dev environment. So our application, let me hit the request, send the request. I send the request. So you can see right now your application is connected with developer environment dev underscore emp database. By looking this name itself, you can confirm that your application connected with developer environment. So now I will give prod environment. So now what will happen? Your application will collect with production environment. Let me send the request. You got the response. You can see right now your application connected with production environment. Now I want to connect with default environment. What is the default environment? Let me go to application.properties. So the default properties file, right, left hand side you can see application.properties. So this one is a default configuration. This file always will have default configuration. So now what I will do, so the application.properties file will have your default configuration. I will disable this property. What I will do, I will just disable this property, profiles property. I will disable it in application.properties file. So now it will connect with, let me give database name as a default emp db. Now you can easily understand each and every concept. So now you can see, now let me, so what I have done, I have disabled the profile concept. Now I am trying to fetch whether my application connected with which database. Now just send the request, your application connected with the default database. It is not connected with dev environment, it is not connected with production environment. So now my application, I want to enable properties for Spring profiles. Now I want to connect with the dev environment. Now go to your REST client. Now send the request. You can see your application connected with developer environment. So you can see by looking name itself, the response which you got from the server, your application connected with developer environment database. So now I want to connect with the prod. Save. Now send the request. Now your application connect with prod database. Very easy guys. Now generally I used to ask interview question. So what will happen? So see, if you see here in your default application dot properties, if you see in default application dot properties, there is a h2 database is enabled. You can see console.h2 database is enabled in your default properties file, but now you are enabling production database, right? So what will happen, let me start the server and show you. uh, so here in default also it is enabled, and your currently you are so let me give here, let me developer environment connected with in-memory database, right? So dev underscore emp database, let me give, to make you proper understanding, let me give dev itself. So what will happen, let me start both the places. See, in developer environment you have enabled h2 console, that is sorry, in developer environment you are going to connect with the dev underscore empdb, and application by default you are going to connect with the default db. But here you have enabled h2 console here also, and developer environments also you have enabled, both the places you have enabled. So whenever your application is starting, all the properties file will load in class loader. So let me run the server. So now by looking into the server, you can see, if you observe here, very most important guys, you can see here, you can observe here, if you see H2 console available. Your database dev environment available. See, your application is showing developer environment database as well as H2 console also. Why? Because I have enabled in application dot properties also and developer environment properties file also. So, but now question, sir, both are there. Both are showing in the console. If you insert the data, in which database your data is going to insert? Guys, this is a question from my side. Can you answer anyone? So here, if you see the console, you can see H2 console is available and the database dev underscore emp database is available. So in my application dot properties, I have given dev environment. I have given dev environment. If you see the console, H2 console also there, and MySQL, your dev environment database also there. Normal H2 console. Which database it will connect? Tell me. Whether the configuration which you have given in application dot properties, this database will connect or your dev environment will connect. Can anybody answer in the chat box? So application is going to connect with default EMP database or your dev environment database, because I have given here dev. If you see the in the console, your H2 it is showing H2 console and dev underscore EMP database. So what does it mean? It is connected with in-memory database, but where your data is going to insert? Guys, very simple question. There is no confusion here. One guy given dev. So what about rest others? See, it is always connect with developer environment database only. So if you give your application dot properties file, if you give active is equal to dev, in the sense whatever configuration database is defined here, your application always going to connect with this database only. There is no confusion. This is only console only. The H2 to enable H2 console. That's it. Nothing. It is not connected with the default database. Only it is enabled your H2 console. Here it is enabled your H2 console. If you see here, let me application dot properties. Let me disabled FALSC. It is not connected with the default server, guys. Okay. So if you see the console now, let me clear the console. Let me start the server again. Its time is over, guys. I have to go outside. I have to go to prayer actually. So here you can see now H2 console is not show. You can see H2 console is showing because still it is showing because in developer environment I have enabled the H2 console. I have enabled the H2 console. So in developer environment. So let me. What will happen if I disable here also? Let's try now. So you have to plug and play like this, guys. You should know your application is connected with which database. Interviewer will ask you to make you confused. So like this, it will enable or disable in default properties file. He will enable in dev or stage environment file. So you should answer. You can see now what is happening. So in application properties and dev environment, I have disabled the H2 console. In default H2 application properties also, I have disabled now. Now my question here is whether your application will successfully start or not. Tell me. Here I have given developer environment. I have given developer environment. Now I want to start my application. Whether it will connect with which database or it will give the error. Tell me. So time is over. So I want to just show you. So we'll discuss more in detail tomorrow. Okay. If you see the console, which database it is connected, added connection with dev underscore emp database, but only thing here is your h2 console is not enabled. So if you go and open localhost localhost colon 8080 slash h2 hyphen console, enter. If you see, your H2 icon console is not at all opening. Only thing is that your application is connected with the database, but your H2 console is not enabled. Nothing, there is no confusion, guys. So even if you in a H2 console enabled to make it as a false in dev environment as well as default environment, both the places, even if you disable, still your application is going to connect with the database. Which database? The profile which you have defined here, dev database. So dev database is having dev underscore emp database. Your application will connect with dev underscore emp database. What is the difference? Only your h2 console is not enabled. That's it. Your h2 console is not enabled, but still your application is connected with your h2 in memory dev environment database. Okay, so guys, will connect it tomorrow. Tomorrow I will show you whether really data is going to insert in dev environment or prod environment or default environment. You can try at your home also, and I will show you tomorrow, and then we'll start new concept from tomorrow. Okay, thank you guys. You have to practice one time. Okay.